بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل بفضل الله وبرحمته فبذلك فليفرحوا هو خير مما يجمعون صدق الله العلي العظيم. My dearest, my most respected, my honorable elders, beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, we begin by taking this opportunity to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to glorify and to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for once again enabling us with this unique and wonderful opportunity, this experience to come together in a house from among His houses for the sole purposes of worshipping Him, glorifying Him, praising Him, and ultimately to send salutations upon His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we pray that Allah Azza wa Jal will continue to facilitate these kinds of opportunities for us in the future, inshaAllah. Over the last few weeks, we've had the opportunity, the experience of getting to the groove of fasting, of prayer, increasing our level of ibadah, of worship, as the month of Ramadan edges closer. And for those of you who have been here, we've been discussing the Road to Ramadan series, where a lot of factors have been discussed. Most importantly, what our preparation is going to be like, what our preparation entails, how important it is for us to solidify our intentions, how imperative it is that we have a renewed sense of energy for the sake of worship, for the purposes of worship, how imperative it is we understand the nature of fasting and what fasting is supposed to represent for us. And today I'm going to talk about the last of this Ramadan series, or the Road to Ramadan series. I spoke about how important it is to begin for anything. For anything, it's important to begin your preparation early. If you seek completion, if you seek kamal, if you seek to do something in a complete way, in a justified way, it's imperative that you prepare for it in advance. Preparation is always key. Some of us, we deceive ourselves into thinking that when Ramadan comes, we're suddenly going to change and it's going to be like a light switch. A light switch is going to come on and then that light switch turns off at the end of Ramadan. It's not as easy as that, You have to have a sense of preparation. The Sahaba I mentioned before, that 6 months prior to the month of Ramadan beginning, they would beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Oh Allah, grant us life so that we may be able to experience this blessed month again." And then when Ramadan would arrive, these individuals who spent the last 6 months preparing for it, do you think they'd allow a single moment of it to go to waste? No, they wouldn't. The reason why we feel incomplete, or our worship feels incomplete at the end of Ramadan, at the culmination of Ramadan, the reason why we feel that way is because we didn't prepare for it properly beforehand. The reason why we feel we didn't accomplish enough, we didn't do enough. In 9 times out of 10, although it's good to feel that you haven't done enough, right? But 9 times out of 10 is actually the truth, that we haven't done enough. We could have done more. We should have achieved more. So we don't want to be sitting here at the end of Ramadan thinking, Ramadan passed me by and I didn't take any benefit from it, or I didn't take as much benefit from it that I should have done. I mentioned it again before, and I'm going to mention it again. This could possibly be our last Ramadan. Life is so uncertain. There is no doubt that we must make the best for it. And we know of the reward. We know that the rewards are multiplied by 10, multiplied by 100. Even then, if we still don't increase in our level of salah, in our level of ibadah, in our level of worship, then we only have ourselves to blame. Only have ourselves to blame. And I give often the example, if suddenly, you know, your where you get your clothes from, or in town or in city center, there was a huge sale, and the sale is whether it's a Boxing Day sale or whatever other day sale. I know and I read of people queue up for those sales, in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Why? Because they know that the sale is there. They want to grab as much as they possibly can. You've seen the images of people running into these as soon as the shops open, trying to grab whatever they can for themselves, not let anything go to waste, not let anything go to somebody else. This is Ramadan is like that on a much grander scale. Ramadan is that sale that we have. Rewards, multiple rewards on offer. Rewards on offer. Everything is on offer. Right? And it's there given. It's not even subhanAllah. It's not costing us a penny. It's really not. They're just given away by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we don't take benefit of that, if we don't truly utilize that, then who else do we have to blame but ourselves? It's only ourselves that we have to blame. I mentioned last week in terms of preparation that when it comes to fasting, we know how important fasting is. And fasting is not reserved for the month of Ramadan alone. Fasting is an act that acts as a shield for us. It's a shield, a protection against sin. We don't only need protection against sin in the month of Ramadan, we need it outside of the month of Ramadan too. So the best way to prepare for that, for its arrival, is to already begin preparing your body for when, or getting your body used to when Ramadan would arrive. There's a lot of us who, unfortunately, the last time we fasted was the last Ramadan, the last month of Ramadan, and the next time we're going to fast is when the month of Ramadan begins. That's just not enough. It takes a few days for a person to start getting used to it again. The reason why we struggle at times, and if we struggle at all, the reason why we struggle is because our bodies are not used to it. Mentally, psychologically, we're not used to it. Spiritually, we're not used to fasting. The Prophet ﷺ, there's wisdom in his worship. There's wisdom in his sunnah, in his practice. Outside of the month of Ramadan, the month in which the Prophet ﷺ fasted the most in is the month of Sha'ban. And that's the month that leads into Ramadan. Why? It's preparation for Ramadan. It's preparation for Ramadan. Recitation of the Quran, we're going to be listening to the Quran being recited throughout the month. Throughout the month. Inshallah, our Sheikh is here. I just saw him a few months ago. I think he went out again. Sheikh Dhul who's arrived from Malaysia, Sheikh Dhul Fiqar, mashallah. Allah bless him and Allah honor him. He's going to be reciting the Quran so eloquently, melodiously, beautifully throughout the month of Ramadan. We've got an opportunity to listen to that being recited. Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran, this is the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was revealed. If we do not strengthen our connection with the Quran in the month that it was revealed in, then we've allowed that month to go to waste. This is the month in which we should excel in not only our recitation, our understanding, our appreciation, our interpretation of the Quran. This is so much more than that. The rewards that we will gain. The Prophet ﷺ stated that, and I mentioned this to our parents, our madrasa parents who send their children to the madrasa. I said, make sure you don't, you ensure that you send them in the month of Ramadan, even if it's for a short while, for the reward purposes alone. The Prophet ﷺ And who was he referring to? Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He was referring to the likes of us, who all we experience is hunger and thirst. We don't experience the spirituality, right? We don't experience the extra, the barakat, the extra rewards of worship. We allow the entire day to pass us by, and we limit Ramadan to suhoor and to iftar. That's it. That's what we limit it down to. I'm not eating and I'm not drinking. That's my fun. No. Ramadan is so much more than that. Ramadan is about change, inspiring change, encouraging change within each and every one of us. When the Prophet ﷺ was fasting and the Sahaba were fasting, not only were the Sahaba fasting by not eating and drinking and refraining from acting upon their desires, but they were also learning how to control their tongues. They were controlling their other desires, the desires to do something wrong, the desires to follow their nafs, their soul, their spirit. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that fasting is not only refraining or abstaining from eating and drinking, but also to refrain from using abusive and from using foul language. If one of you is being cursed or annoyed, he should remind himself and say, "In Yisa'in, that I am fasting, I am fasting." Remind yourself that if you're getting into a position where you know that you're going to get angry and you might say something, you might do something that might upset somebody else, that might gain you, instead of the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the divine graces of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, instead might gain you the punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal, then it's imperative that we stop ourselves. It's imperative that we control ourselves. If we can't learn how to even control our tongues, then what can we do? How are we truly going to benefit? Stop ourselves from talking, from getting angry. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, moderation in everything is key. Wusutiyya in everything is key. One of the Ibrahim and Nakhai, he was one of the teachers of Imam Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. May Allah have mercy upon them both. He mentioned that the people that were before you in the days of Jahiliyyah, they were ruined due to three characteristics. Three characteristics that they were ruined for. And he mentioned, and he says, too much talking, too much eating, and too much sleeping. That's exactly what's going to happen in Ramadan. Too much talking, we find ourselves with more time on our hands. So instead of controlling our tongues and our desires and using our tongue for the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we use it for other purposes, for attaining the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Too much eating, you think to yourself, how is that possible? I'll give you statistics, facts, that in the month of Ramadan, we Muslims consume more food in the month of Ramadan than outside of the month of Ramadan. And you think to yourself, well, how does that make sense? Some of you are nodding and agreeing with what you understand. We consume more food. It's as if when the month of Ramadan begins, our soul and entire focus is on, stocking up the coffers. Making sure the fridge is full, making sure we have all of the, we have our, whatever food that it is that we need to eat for iftar and for suhoor, everything is ready because everything is about food. Our entire preparation is limited to food alone. That's it. And then we eat so much for suhoor and so much for iftar that if we weren't fasting, we wouldn't be eating that much during the day anyway. More food, more money is spent on food. In fact, just take this as an example. Your takeaways in your restaurants. Ramadan is the biggest earner for them in the entire year. You think, how is it possible? Because nobody's should be buying food from them throughout the day. That's fine. Just the iftar alone is enough. Suhoor time alone is enough. And that's a sad state of affairs for us. That's a sad reality for us. That our consumption is supposed to decrease because the hungry you are, the less you consume, the more concerned with worship you are. The hungrier you are, the hungrier your body is, the more your soul is awake, the more your spirit awakens. And the more full you are, the more you have filled your bellies, the less your spirit awakens. And you can testify to this yourselves, that when you're full and when you eat into your full, Imam Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah ta'ala, this is, again, we don't eat anymore unless we eat until we're full, right? Otherwise, what's the point of eating, right? Until we're full. Now, Hassan al-Basri, he was some food had been brought to him, and he was traveling with a companion, and he offered that food to his sahib, to his companion, and the companion says, I've eaten and I'm no longer able to eat. Basically, I'm full. I've eaten and I'm full. To which Imam Hassan al-Basri, he says, Subhanallah, incredulously, he says, Subhanallah, does a Muslim eat until he is full? He said, is that possible? How is it possible that a Muslim should consume so much that he is unable to consume anymore? Does a Muslim eat until he is full? Never in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, you'd find in the statements of the companions, the statements of his wives, that never did the Prophet ﷺ eat until he was completely satisfied. The Sahaba stated that about themselves, that never did we eat until we were satisfied. As in, they would only eat to quench their hunger. They would only drink to quench their thirst. That's it. To no longer be hungry. We eat until we are physically unable to eat anymore. Until we're literally about to pop. The Prophet ﷺ told us, he said, listen, split your stomach up into 3 parts. 1/3 for water, 1/3 for food, and leave 1/3 for air. Enough for you to breathe. We don't leave a single bit for breathing. We cover it, we fill it with food and drink. And when the month of Ramadan arrives, those things that we should learn to control and to moderate, they become worse. One of the worst things that you could do, especially for those of us, one of the biggest problems that we have in the Muslim community, wider Muslim community, that's not only this South Asian Muslim community, for example, but the wider Muslim community, is diabetes. Diabetes is one of the biggest or largest ailments affecting not only Muslims. I mean, it's one of the biggest problems for the NHS in general. Right? And what does diabetes require? What's the cure for it? Moderation. Moderation in everything. Eating moderately. Exercising moderately. Those are things that are required. That's supposed to be the life of a Muslim anyway. We're supposed to live in moderation. Imam Hassan al-Basri also stated that one of the greatest tests for the son of Adam, as in the children of Adam, one of the greatest tests was food, is food, and will remain so up until Yawm al-Qiyamah. One of the greatest tests that we have, our consumption of it. Many of us fast during the month of Ramadan, during the day, and at iftar time we make up and then we overcompensate for remaining hungry throughout the day. Binge eating, so to speak. Consume as much as you can. And then the foods that we consume, the quality of those foods is vastly different to the quality of food that we would otherwise perhaps have consumed. Because we're hungry, and when you're hungry, you know, you want you want to compensate with the best of food, with the nicest of food, so the tastiest of food. So, in all likelihood, you're going to be eating food that is often not healthy for you anyway. When we fill ourselves, it's a natural state. What happens when you're full? When you're full, you're unable to move. You get tired. You have a lackadaisical approach. You know, and then you're supposed to worship after that. You're supposed to read your Taraweeh after that. You're supposed to stay up at night to worship after that. It's almost impossible. That's why it's so important that we utilize this Ramadan to focus not only on fasting, but on our health in general. You know, why do we have so many health concerns? Ramadan is one of the greatest cures to illnesses, and illnesses mainly that are affecting your stomach is fasting. That's clinically proven by professionals that fasting, people in general should fast throughout the month at least a few days. It's like a cleanse for the body. Well, our religion has already taught us that. The Prophet ﷺ has taught us about the white days in the month, the 12th, the 13th, the 14th of the month, that he would regularly fast Mondays and Thursdays in the month, in the week when the Prophet ﷺ would regularly fast. We've got those opportunities in front of us. We know this, and yet we refuse, or we choose not to act upon it. So make this Ramadan about eating healthy, being healthy, consuming less, focusing on the spirit of Ramadan. Let the spirit reign supreme this Ramadan. Focus on those activities, the activities that are displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we're fulfilling throughout the month of Ramadan. Too much sleeping. In fact, we sleep more in the month of Ramadan than we do otherwise. We take off our time from work, thinking, we need to focus on Ramadan. What does that mean? It just means sleeping. It just means eating and drinking, and that's it. And talking and engaging in behavior that is displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The companions stated, the Salafus Salihin stated that Rajab is the month to sow the seeds, Sha'ban is the month to irrigate the crops, and Ramadan is the month to reap the harvest. If we haven't sown the seeds, if we haven't irrigated the crops, if we haven't watered the crops, then no seeds are going to sprout into beautiful flowers in the month of Ramadan. That preparation should already have been there, and now we're supposed to reap the rewards. Devotion when it comes to Salah. And I'm going to leave you with this. Salah is not something that should be taken lightly. Our prayer is not something that should be left to the side. Our prayer is not something that should be an afterthought. Prayer is incredibly important. Without our prayer, without our Salah, we will fail. It's as simple as that. One of the very first things that we're going to be questioned about on Yawm al-Qiyamah is our prayer. Were we scrupulous concerning our prayers? This is the month that if you weren't praying regularly, this is the month where you start praying regularly. And you make that a habit, a daily occurrence. You've got the opportunity, alhamdulillah, the masajid are full in the month of Ramadan. In Ramadan, as soon as Ramadan starts, you'll see people coming to the masjid more, praying in congregation more. But our prayer is fard, it's obligatory, not only in the month of Ramadan, throughout the rest of the year. So let this be that stepping stone. Let this be that learning curve, Ramadan, that we're inspired to include in our lives these things that we should have been doing before, and then making them a mainstay of our lives once the month of Ramadan passes. We often complain, we complain about physical issues. Oh, this is certain, that's certain. Fasting is a cure for many of our illnesses that we suffer from. But then we also complain about lack of sleep, anxiety, depression. We talk about our mental. We've got so many ailments also. The cure for those mental ailments is establishing a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, devotion, ikhlas within our prayer. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, he suffered from an eye problem. And this is how scrupulous the companions were with regards to their prayers. And a doctor said to him that a treatment is possible on the condition that you don't make sajda for 5 days. The treatment is possible for you, but you can't make sajda, you can't prostrate for 5 days. You can, however, perform a wooden desk or something to perform your salah on, but not on the ground. And Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, and he said, this is never going to be. This is never going to happen. I cannot allow myself to pray a single rak'ah, a single unit of prayer, where I don't bow my head or I don't prostrate upon the ground. Because I've heard the Prophet ﷺ saying that a person who intentionally leaves out a single salah shall have to face the anger and the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Yawm al-Qiyamah. We find the smallest excuses. A little bit of pain in my leg, a little bit of pain in my back. I'm going to sit down on the chair, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And, I'm going to pray sitting down. I'm not going to pray at all. We find the smallest of excuses. These individuals, their lives were on the line, but they never left their prayer. Their lives were on the line, they never left their prayer. I pray, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me and you the tawfiq and the ability to act upon the teachings of the Quran, the noble sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah azza wa jal enable each and every one of us to extract from the month of Ramadan the most that we possibly can. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable each and every one of us to allow this month to be the catalyst for change in our lives, to inspire the best in our lives, and to inspire such good in our lives that we're able to maintain that level of consistency once the month of Ramadan has passed. And alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Before you stand up to pray